Snakes in the studio today, coming up on episode 3 of the Arizona Report, how to snake-proof your Arizona home. Our guest today is a herpetologist in the Phoenix area. He owns and operates Rattlesnake Solutions LLC. It's a rattlesnake relocation, prevention, and education group. Rattlesnake Solutions is the most active snake relocation service in Arizona, relocating over 1,000 snakes each year from homes in Phoenix and Tucson. Our guest's service is 100% humane relocation. His name is Bryan D. Hughes. Bryan, welcome to the Arizona Report.
Hello.
Hi. You've got a guest with us today, and she's beautiful.
I do. It's a western diamondback rattlesnake. This is the most common snake that you're going to run into in Phoenix. And I don't mean just common rattlesnake. That's the most common snake you're going to run into. And that includes yards, driveways, garages, and hiking trails. So.
Tell me about their personality. I assume they love cold, cool hiding spaces like garages.
Yeah, in Arizona. The trick here is to stay cool and wet and hydrated and well fed. So, the desert's a harsh place to live. So when people put neighborhoods right next to the desert with nice lush yards and feed the bunnies and stuff like that, then you get wildlife showing up. And she's an example of the type that might show up.
She's talking to us. I can see that tongue coming out. She's trying to figure out where she is.
Yeah, I got her in someone's property in Anthem about 8 years ago now, and she still gives me the business every time I put her in that display box.
She's in a new place today. Mm-hmm. Snake-proofing your Arizona home. Homeowners and home buyers are probably thinking they might live on the edge of the desert, North Scottsdale. How do they decrease the likelihood that a snake would come onto their property in terms of brush? There's pools, water features.
A few things to look at this. So there's one that's it's not as absolute, but it's something that everybody probably should do. This is part of just kind of being responsible and living in those places and taking action before you see a rattlesnake, is to just look at your property as habitat, food, water, and shelter. If you are providing resources to animals,
they will come.
They will show up. It's not a matter of if. Eventually you're going to see a snake. It doesn't matter if you live there for 10 years and never see anything. If you have a drip system going back there and you're watering native plants that don't need it, if you have big rosemary bushes and piles of wood back there, things are going to come use that.
Yes.
It's not just snakes, but things that snakes like do. So if you have a wood pile that's attracting rodents, they're going to come in. And the other thing you can do is to do other more absolute measures like snake fencing. So
what is snake fencing?
That's one of the things that we do. It's basically to proof your yard. Fence is kind of a funny word for it because a lot of people think it's we're actually building a fence. It's not really. It's attached to existing structures, and it's basically to take the standard yard that you find here in Phoenix. Might have view fences on it and a couple of gates and drain blocks and all that. The standard stuff you find here, and then modifying those structures so that they will not let rattlesnakes into it of any size. So how that's done, how to make it so that the snakes are not going to be able to try to figure out other ways to get in. It's going to be durable. That's that's what we do.
You block them out. And
block them out.
You do this. You take in 1,000 of these a year and relocate them to the desert.
Yeah.
You're 100% humane service, and you find them a nice home and far away from the concerned
We're really friendly
homeowner.
with them. Some people don't like that, but we give them a drink of water and take them to a good spot. So
there you go. Now, usually with my guests, I'll give the contact information at the end of the podcast, but there's probably somebody watching this video on YouTube. They live in Scottsdale. They've got a rattlesnake in their garage, and they need to reach out and call you right now. What is the best number that they can contact you on?
We have a 24-hour hotline. It's 480-237-9975. And that number, someone will always answer it, and we go anywhere, anytime. Right now, I have 3 people on the hotline. stationed around the valley, so we can be anywhere in about 30 minutes or so.
So you service the entire Phoenix metro and Tucson.
And Tucson.
Okay. And if somebody's just casually wanting to research this or find out more about you, what website can they go to?
Rattlesnakesolutions.com is our website. We also have a Facebook page, just facebook.com/snake removal. And the difference is on our Facebook page, there's just a lot more content and videos about just the snake. There's a lot more educational stuff on the Facebook page.
And you do some talks with maybe schools, or how do you?
Nature
what's
centers,
your education.
Lots of presentations at different places. I've lately been trying to get out of as many nature center talks in places where people like wildlife,
Yes.
and tried to talk to where, I've done a couple of talks at community centers of HOAs and a couple of churches and places where people just hate snakes. And it feels like that's where the work is for me. There's lots of nature guys that can go talk about snakes. I need to talk to someone that they see a snake and they start crying.
Someone who's not going to seek out the education.
Right, because if you live here, you need that education.
We live in the Sonoran Desert. There,
yeah, exactly.
Snakes are with us. So, where in the valley do you get most of your calls?
Well, anywhere around the perimeter. So that's expanding exponentially every year as the city grows. The ones that we get probably the most is in Cave Creek and Scottsdale.
Cave Creek, and it's probably North Scottsdale.
Yeah, anywhere along the north of the 101 in there.
The boulders
all the time.
Carefree.
Yep.
All that development is pushing closer to the Tonto and these guys.
It's also the yard style that's up there too, because the homes have space between them, and there's a lot of rules in most of those those communities of the things that you can keep put in your yard and the spaces between the homes. Even in areas that are 100% developed, there are little pockets that rattlesnakes still use and live in. So we're up there, every day, multiple times.
What kind of what are the top 5 that you see? This is a Western Diamondback snake.
A Western Diamondback is the most common. Out of 10 snakes that we get called out to release, there's going to be 7 of them are Western Diamondbacks.
But you probably get some calls for non-poisonous snakes too, like a gopher snake.
We do. Gopher
snake.
snakes, night snakes. A night snake is a little thing most people haven't heard about, but it has a tendency to show up in bathrooms. It comes up through pipes. So
those are fun.
Yeah, and they look a lot like rattlesnakes to people. So we get calls every day for those to. Someone calls and says there's a snake in their kitchen, and those are always fun because they're little tiny guys that just disappear afterwards.
They're quick.
Yeah, but it still doesn't help people go to sleep afterwards because they know there's a snake in their house, but
Right.
they just try to get out. King snakes are common pets.
Describe a king snake.
Black and white stripes.
Black and white. So mostly black with white stripes over the arch of its back.
About 50-50. White and black bands. Anytime, next time you go to a pet store to get dog food or something, they go look in the pet reptile section. They'll have them there.
And the king snakes are actually an enemy to the rattlesnakes.
Yeah.
If you have a king snake in your yard, he's hunting rattlesnakes.
They love rattlesnakes.
King snakes are not poisonous, so not venomous.
Yeah.
Hiking. We're gearing up for hiking season now that it's September, October here in the valley. What are some tips that we can give listeners about hiking safely and being aware?
Well, my presentation is about a 2-hour talk, which is the longest way to say, don't touch it.
Don't touch it.
And that's it. If you're hiking and you see a rattlesnake and it's over there somewhere, the danger's already over unless you choose to go and engage with that animal. There are no rattlesnakes that are going to come after you or come get you. Or if you see a snake there near the trail, you don't have to kill it thinking that you're going to be saving the next hiker. There are rattlesnakes all over the place, and some of my study sites in the mountains around Phoenix, there are large groups of rattlesnakes that live and hunt within 10 feet of the trail all over the place. They've always lived there. They don't bother anybody. They don't bite anybody either. That's something that's important to note too, is that the danger is pretty subjective. A lot of it's just kind of in our minds, because what do you think of when you think of rattlesnakes? You think snakes on a plane, or you think about your buddy at work that has all these crazy stories about rattlesnakes. The reality is a lot more boring. And in the Phoenix Mountains, the last 2 bites that happened there last year, and there are hundreds and hundreds of rattlesnakes that live right alongside the trails that are there. The only 2 bites that happened last year were both men on top of the mountain holding picked up rattlesnakes.
Pick them up. Probably people throw rocks at them. They engage the snake.
Just doing stuff that they don't need to do.
Wrong thing to do.
It's simple. It's boring. It's not good for Instagram. But leave it alone. Walk away. That's it.
What are some of, and you go on hundreds of calls a year.
Yeah.
What are some of the typical places that people will show you a rattlesnake in their home? I know the garage is probably pretty popular. Nice, cool corner of a garage. Maybe a pool pump equipment enclosure.
Yeah, it changes throughout the year. You know, in the winter, in the spring, we get a lot of calls from garages, like you said. It just turns into a nice cave for them to spend the winter.
And the weather stripping on the garage door is often torn or missing, and that is just a perfect,
keep up on that. That's one of the things to look for.
Perfect entrance.
Definitely is look at that weather stripping because things get in there. Also, you said under the pool equipment. During most of the summer, though, when it's really hot, they're trying to escape the heat, so they spend a lot of time just in the corners, like the front entryway by doors and the back porch.
My neighbor had a king snake curled up on his front porch.
Yeah, they just tuck back in there. It's just like an overhang to them. That's actually, if you were looking for them in the wild, you would be looking for those types of overhangs in riverbeds and washes. It's pretty similar. It's just a place for them to kind of sleep away the day, and that's when people discover them when they get up to go to work in the morning and that kind of thing. So,
or they like to be, back themselves into a corner. They're covered on three sides. And that makes sense. What are their goals for food and shelter? How often do they eat, and how often do they drink?
A lot of them, they'll eat it whenever they can, but the opportunities don't always come up. Every few weeks in the wild, they might eat. Some might only eat once or twice a year. It really depends on where they live and the availability of prey that's there. There are some snakes that specialize in lizards, some specialize in birds. Diamondback, like this one, I've seen some that only eat doves because doves are idiots and will just sit in the tree and get picked off all day by them. But
do these guys climb trees?
Some do a little bit, but it's nothing to really worry about. It's not so much a matter of can as will. Like you could get on the roof of the grocery store if you wanted to, but that's not really what you do. So you don't. There might be a guy up on the roof someday, but
it's a lot of effort.
Yeah, that's not typically where
for
you
them
find
to crawl
people.
up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Mating season. When are they most active in the valley?
Mostly in the spring, and it's not always a matter of whether they're most. So it's kind of it's an odd question because when people most of the time when they ask that, they're thinking, when am I going to most likely see rattlesnakes? When do I have to watch out for? A lot of their prime activity really takes place in the middle of the night during late summer and the monsoon season. But where people actually run into them the most is in April and early May when temperatures in the daytime are prime for hiking too. So you have lots of snakes moving around in the daytime instead of at night, and you also have a huge burst of people hiking. So those two things combined makes for lots of snake interactions. In the spring also is when you get them in people's yards a lot too. And that has to do with mating. So if there's a female that's in somebody's yard, we always look around for males, because if there's a lone female sitting there, she is not alone. There's going to be other animals that are trying to find her or have found her. And then there might be a little bit of that in the fall, but not so much. Like right now, it's first week of September, second week of September. So all the snakes they've all given birth. They got a lot of work to do before the winter comes. They got to eat, and some of them mate again. I'd say April and right now are prime activity times.
In terms of snake proofing a home, I've known people who've had water features in their backyards, and they live in Cave Creek or North Scottsdale, and those little water features, those ponds are pretty attractive to snakes. What other things are people doing that are attracting snakes that they don't know? Steps that they could take to eliminate these pieces and snake proof.
Yeah, well, a lot of so going to the habitat reduction side of the snake proofing work is to just look at all the cover that's in the yard. We all want to have a pretty yard, right? We all want to have an aesthetic that's makes us happy to be in. But there's a lot of this stuff that seems kind of optional sometimes too. So what I tell people is, if any bush that's here that you're on the fence about, if you're in discussions with your husband or wife about maybe getting rid of the old shed or something like that, just do it. You know, because if you have anything that an animal can use, it's going to use. So in general, the less clutter that you have back there, the less chances of seeing animals.
Take away the clutter, take away the brush, make sure your weather stripping on your garage door is complete.
Yep.
You're taking away the cover. You're eliminating the food sources, and that's a big first step.
That's the biggest thing. Is that they're coming. You're always going to get some snakes that just kind of wander up, but there's a huge difference between snakes that are showing up at your house randomly versus snakes that smell your house from 100 yards away and cruise in on scent trails left by rodents.
Are there? You mentioned on the fringes. These guys are pushing out on the fringes. If somebody lives at 40th Street and Thunderbird, they're less likely to see a rattlesnake because those habitats have been largely residential for decades.
They wouldn't. They wouldn't see one there. And some of those, I can't say. There's a big asterisk on that too, because occasionally there's some teenager that brings a rattlesnake home and lets it go in the backyard or something that we got to deal with. But for the most part, they're specialists. They're not like gopher snakes that can be found everywhere through town.
Okay.
Rattlesnakes, they do one thing and they do it really well, and they require native habitat to do that. So any place that you're within, I would say a quarter mile of open desert. I mean, saguaro, that wasn't planted somewhere.
Yeah.
Then that's a place that you could potentially run into a wild rattlesnake. If you're right next to the desert, if you're the house that goes right up against it, or especially if you're the house on the corner of that street.
Okay.
Where you have the types of neighborhoods where this washes too. And that's a really common thing, to where at the end of the developments, there's a wall that goes along that. And that wall acts like a funnel. So when snakes hit that from the other side, they don't just turn around, I can't go through this wall. They don't just turn around and do it about face and crawl away. They go one way or the other, and they follow that wall. So if you're in the if you're on the corners of that and the edges of that, then you're in the most likely zone to get rattlesnakes. So that
makes sense.
Really important then to do everything you can. And sometimes that's not just reducing plants, because they're not there a lot of times for any reason. They're there because you're the closest place that they're going to go. You're the first drink of water that's available to them, so.
The first shade. Bryan, if someone is looking to find you again, what's a good contact information? A good contact number where they can reach you?
Yeah, we have a 24-hour hotline. It's 480-237-9975, and that's for snake removal, anything to do with our snake fence installation and snake proofing, and just any questions too. One of the things that we like to do, it's part of our education that people find valuable, is we identified any snake. Is if you're hiking and you see some brown snake crawl into the bushes and you just want to know what it eats, give me a call. I will talk to you until you tell me to shut up about everything you want to know about that snake.
As far as your fees, those are probably there's probably not one set fee, because every circumstance is different.
Yeah, I'll leave it open to my guys in the field. There's certain rattlesnakes are easy. If there's a rattlesnake, it's 20 minutes away from my house. It's basically for time. We don't really charge for what the task is very often. We don't charge different amounts, whether it's venomous or not. We try to give people as much information on the phone too. So if it's a harmless snake,
they can address it.
They should know that. They should know. But we're still happy to come get it if they just don't want it around. But we want to make sure they have the information. Generally, it's in the range of about $120.
Okay.
For $140, we will add a property inspection too, where we'll look around. We'll be looking for basically anything in your yard that can be attracting snakes. Try to figure out why that snake is there.
So you're just not there to show up, throw it in a 5-gallon bucket and take off. You're going to tell the seller what they can do to prevent it in the future.
That is the important part. The rattlesnake being in your yard is a symptom of a bigger problem. The problem is that you live in a place that rattlesnakes are at, and there's something in your yard that's bringing them there. All the guys that I work with, I train them constantly. I mean, most of my life. Like tonight, right after this, I'm going to be going out to the desert with the ranger from Cave Creek Park to go look for wild rattlesnakes to take pictures, and I have to catch geckos to feed my baby sidewinders. I mean, this is just my life,
You're passionate about it.
Yeah, so having people that are all on that level with it, we can solve things that a lot of people can't. We really know. I can tell you what snake poop looks like versus hawk poop or something like that. It's the kind of thing that we specialize in. So
that you've done this for how many years?
I've always caught snakes. I've only done it professionally for 10 years.
That's a lot of experience.
Yeah, and then this has been my full-time gig for about a year now. So
excellent. Well, thank you, Bryan. I appreciate you coming in today to the Arizona Report, and we'd like to have you back maybe with a couple more snakes on a future episode.
Sure, no problem.
So. Excellent. Thanks for tuning in. My name is David Meek. I'm a licensed Arizona real estate broker. If you'd like, you can reach me in the studio, 480-999-MOVE, or my website, arizonareport.com. Thank you for tuning in today to our episode number 3, Snakes on a Podcast with Bryan Hughes of RattlesnakeSolutions.com. We'll see you soon on a future episode. Thanks.